Alright, so following up with my initial video talking about my new journey into World versus World, you learn some things very quickly, and a couple of the things that I learned perhaps are a bit obvious, but they could also provide some benefit to some new players. So here are the 7 things that I learned in World v World very fast, and why it's important for you to pick these up as well. So first and foremost, right out of the gate, the most obvious thing that you are going to do in Guild Wars 2 World versus World is die. You are going to die quite a bit, a lot. Ideally, not as often, not blindly running into a large group of enemies and hoping for the best outcome. But getting used to World versus World, you are going to make some mistakes and have really bad positioning that's going to cost you a downstate. And that's okay. But the idea of it is that you are learning from each one of these deaths. Because each one of these deaths gives points to the enemy team, it's important to make sure you're applying yourself in the best way possible. Now, I also hark this over to Guild Wars 2 PvP. If you are doing something in a match that is not benefiting your team or essentially just wasting time, then perhaps you should look at it from a different angle. Go and attempt to do something that is more beneficial, like capture a supply camp or join a Zerg that is taking down a tower. Point being is that when you are in downstate and you die and then you have to run all the way back to wherever you were, wherever that action was, you're wasting a lot of time. And you know, that's not always the best thing to do. Followed right very closely to that is the importance of your Warclaw and improving your Warclaw skills. Now, the Warclaw is the World versus World specific mount that, of course, provides an extra bit of mobility, moving faster than just, say, your running speed, even with swiftness. Now, what's important to note is that if you are with groups who have high Warclaw mastery, that they will be able to essentially speed you along and allow you to run at the same pace as they are, even if you don't actually have your Warclaw unlocked. But working on your Warclaw was probably one of the most important things that I would say you should do starting out in World versus World. I would also put that up there with getting gliding unlocked for World versus World for ally-controlled territories. But all in all, the Warclaw is possibly the most important thing that you should work on first. As you're going to be trying to figure out all the other facets of World versus World, it definitely helps to have some extra mobility. Third on this list, if you are new to World versus World and you are curious of seeing what it's all about, my biggest recommendation and the thing that I learned very quickly is always just look for the commander or ask for the commander in that particular map. The commander will have a tag above their heads. It might look like this one, but the idea of it is that the commander tag draws allies to them, and then you form a large group. And usually in this large group, you can take down towers, you can even assail keeps, or in this sense, you could fight other grouped enemies. Now, of course, a tag that doesn't necessarily have like a Discord or voice comms or any type of, we'll say, communication back and forth may not be as, we'll say, better suited to handle other mobs of enemies who are on Discord, who are significantly more coordinated. But it's a great place to start, and especially when you are looking to get into World versus World, as well as getting some really good experience to start out. Because ranking up in World v World is obviously one of the best things that you can do as you unlock more features that make you more suited to handle everything that World versus World has. The fourth most important thing kind of pairs with finding the commander, but I will also say is learning your server as well as finding your Discord. Now, finding the appropriate Discord for your server can be incredibly beneficial, especially when you are looking to just get started. Because of finding that server's Discord, you can see when certain events or players are on, and you can ask in that Discord and coordinate a little bit better. So instead of you just being out in the wilds on your own, you could join with 2 to 3 to 5 players all together and roam about without any extra stress. Now, what's important to note, of course, with that particular Discord and your server is that it may not always match up to when you can sit down and play with world versus world. This is something that I personally run into because most nights I don't get a chance to log in until later in the day. Take this one kind of with a grain of salt that it may not always be best suited, and worst case scenario, I would say find a guild that focuses on world versus world. We have 5 slots for guilds anyway, so might as well make the best of them. Next thing that I learned pretty damn quickly, and this is even something that I ran into when I first started going for my Warclaw, is the fact that gear choice matters. Now, recently I had a chance to sit down with Valen, an experienced and arguably pro world versus world player, and we had quite a few conversations talking about specific gear choices. Given the amount of different scenarios that you will run into in world versus world, changing your gear can drastically change the outcome of any given fight. I bring up, for example, that I was running the Viper's gear set, which improves condition damage as well as condition duration, where it was brought to my attention that grieving or even celestial gear sets may be better suited for the type of play that I like to do. With my double dagger catalyst, I enjoyed one versus ones and picking off weakened enemies. And choosing the right gear and the right setup will vastly improve the outcome of any given fight that I would have. And this is more of a learning process. And this kind of leads into my next point, which is something that I recommend you absolutely looking into and figuring out, and that is finding a proper build. Now, figuring out how you want to play and what you need to do, of course, in any given game mode is obviously that research on the back end is probably your most important part. And this plays special note specifically to your build, as well as, well, your gear and your weapon and your sigils and everything else that flows into it. And there are plenty of resources that are made available for your use. Specifically for world versus world content and builds, I recommend using Guild Gen. Guild Gen has lots of up-to-date and honestly fun builds that are very well explained and easily accessible. And then to see a lot of these builds kind of in demonstration, I recommend watching Valen. Valen, who streams Guild Wars 2 amongst other things, has a lot of content geared around player versus player and specifically world versus world. So consuming that content and focusing on what is best for your particular class as well as your playstyle is incredibly important. When in doubt, just search it. Again, highly recommend Guild Gen as your go-to. And arguably the last thing and probably the most important thing for you to do when getting into world versus world is to remember to have fun. There are so many times in world versus world I kept that focus where I need to, do XYZ. I need to maximize your time. A lot of my enjoyment came when I just ended up running with a handful of strangers, and we would go and attack a tower or capture a supply camp and just have fun. And we would chat and we would just say, hey, what's going on? How are you guys? And it's just that camaraderie that really made the game mode a hell of a lot of fun. And you'll be surprised with how often that you run into players like this where it's just, hey, we are all out here just doing our own thing. We're just having a good time. Let's hang out. You'd be surprised at how friendly a lot of people are in world versus world, given that it's mainly a PvP mode. The game's meant to be enjoyed, so enjoy it. World versus world has a lot of things that make me really enjoy it, and I cover quite a few of them here in this video on your screen. As always, folks, stay caffeinated.